The Roman Empire, the greatest civilization of antiquity, was, as every empire in history, bound to collapse. When exactly Rome crumbled is a matter of debate, with some claiming that the deposition of Romulus Augustus by the Germanic general Odoacer marked the final blow for the empire, and others pushing the date as far as the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Both views have merit. The Eastern Roman Empire was in every respect a legitimate political successor to Rome. It was, however, compared to the Empire of Antiquity, merely a rump state. This rump state did come close to reuniting the empire, but its efforts to once again light up the torch of Roman civilization ultimately proved futile. But what if that changed? What if Rome remained a united entity and somehow survived till the present day? In this video, we'll follow how Rome's history would have proceeded into the medieval era had it remained unified. The scenario is purely for entertainment purposes, so do take these predictions with a grain of salt. Special thanks to our first patron on the Bulgarian Empire Mapping channel, Troy Tempest. This channel is 100% Patreon sponsored, so do help us out by becoming a patron. Link in the description. To effectively prevent the split of the Roman Empire, we will have to go as far back in time as the 3rd century AD. The division of Rome into semi-independent administrative units governed not by one but by two emperors was a deed of Emperor Diocletian. This reform was very effective at first. It allowed for the overextended Roman Empire to be governed more effectively. However, the presence of multiple men holding the imperial crown would ultimately plunge the empire into multiple civil wars, eventually draining the state's resources and manpower. In this alternate timeline, we will prevent that from happening, and what better way to do so than by having the very capable Emperor Aurelian live through his 5th year of reign. For those who don't know anything about Aurelian, he was a very capable ruler and general who led the empire during the crisis of the 3rd century. He crushed both multiple barbarian invasions and 2 usurpers who had seceded from central Roman authority. He achieved that in less than 5 years, but that would be all he would do, as he was later murdered by his own men. In this alternate timeline, Aurelian escapes his assassination and continues his work. Having no male offspring himself, Aurelian would continue the tradition of old and adopt a capable successor. The empire would thrive in the 4th century in stark contrast to the chaos that had assailed the Mediterranean during the previous 100 years. But all eras of prosperity come to an end, and so would this second Pax Romana. With the arrival of the juggernauts that were the Hunnish tribes and the Germanic tribal confederation along the Danube frontier, Rome will face another period of instability and constant war. Given this, it seems nearly impossible for the empire to not lose land. Formerly prosperous provinces along the border like Gaul, Pannonia, and Britain would thus eventually be lost. According to many, without Emperor Constantine and the fanatically religious Theodosius, the Roman Empire wouldn't have embraced Christianity like it did in our timeline. Given how much Christianity had been spread throughout the empire and its missionary nature, it is highly probable that it would have outperformed in popularity other religious cults like that of the sun god Sol Invictus. So in this alternate timeline, Rome will still adopt Christianity as its official religion, although that would probably begin later than it did in reality. With the disintegration of the Hunnish Empire and the boost in imperial authority provided by Christianity, the Roman Empire would manage to recover in the late 5th and 6th centuries. Various barbarian kingdoms would be formed in the north of Rome, which would too eventually adopt Christianity, making them less hostile toward the Mediterranean giant. This will allow the internal empire to shift its attention to its centuries-old foe of Persia. Thanks to a series of capable emperors, the Persians would suffer a string of humiliating defeats which would culminate in a Roman conquest of Mesopotamia. This severe blow to Persia would severely damage the prestige of the ruling Sassanid dynasty, causing it to be overthrown and fracturing Iran into numerous smaller states. The next century and a half would be one of relative stability. New migrations of Turkic and Slavic tribes would occasionally cause trouble for Rome, but the lack of a major competitor in the Middle East would allow the empire to subjugate some of the locally unruly tribes. However, it would appear that Persia was slowly being reunited by a new energetic dynasty, while at the same time various Germanic kingdoms were gradually consolidating, eventually coming to form a powerful empire. These new rival states would severely curve the balance of power against the millennia-old empire. By the 800s, after a series of draining wars, the Persians would have not only reconquered Mesopotamia but also the Levant and Egypt, bringing their old Achaemenid empire back to life. The Germans would not waste time either, stripping the last remnants of the provinces of Gaul from Rome. The crisis was far from over, however. The Greek-speaking eastern part of the empire, which for centuries had remained an integral part of Roman civilization, would, due to cultural and theological disagreements, eventually secede from the empire. Across the Mediterranean and the harsh deserts of the Maghreb region, the Berbers, who had for centuries been subjects of Rome, would exploit the power vacuum to establish a kingdom of their own. Similarly to how these tribes practiced a unique form of Islam in our timeline, so would they practice Christianity in a very distinct way from how it was practiced in Europe. Eventually, the expansionist Berbers would come to dominate South Hispania as well. A Basque state would also be formed in the northern portion of the former Roman province. The Roman Empire would eventually be limited to the Italian peninsula and a chunk of northern Africa, with Dalmatia constantly exchanging hands between Rome and the Greeks. However, in the 13th century, the balance of power would once again turn in Rome's favor. The succession laws of the northern German kingdom would ultimately leave them fragmented. The Greeks would be weakened by the arrival of the Mongols in Europe, and the Berbers would suffer from inner division as well, enabling Rome to begin a process that would come to be known as the Great Reconquest. By the early 1400s, Rome would have brought back nearly the entire western Mediterranean under its control. In the process, the empire would have become a trade power, with its merchants exchanging and bringing goods from all corners of the old world. Meanwhile, the Greek Empire and the whole of the Middle East fell under the control of a powerful Persianized Mongol dynasty, which would become the main rival of Rome in the Mediterranean and cut eastern trade for all Christian European kingdoms, forcing them to find an alternative route. This would thus begin a new era of exploration, but that is a topic for another video.